Hello there, Saber fans. Shamim here. Today we're doing a video tutorial on how to install a Plector Labs Prizm soundboard into an empty custom Saber. This will be a one-take video, no breaks, no cuts. Let's see how quickly and how efficiently we can install all of these electronics into an empty hilt. Like my previous Nauta Biscotti tutorial video, this is not the only way to install electronics. I'm not even saying that this is the right way or the best way. There may be alternate ways, there may be better ways. This is merely the process that I myself use. This is merely the process that I myself am comfortable with when I install electronics. If you have any questions about my process, please feel free to comment below. If you have suggestions on things that you might do differently, or things that you've discovered or that you've experimented with that work better for you, that you think I might learn from, please also feel free to comment below. I'm always happy to learn and improve my craft. Let's take a look at all the parts that we're going to be using. We have our heatsink for the LED. We have an optics lens for the LED. This is a 1.2 ohm resistor for the red diode. The LED that we're using is a Tricree XPE2, red, royal blue, white. So the blue and the white do not need to be resistored. You can throw a 1 ohm resistor on there if you want to, for practice and for, safety net. But it's really not necessary. You really do need to resist the reds and the ambers, though. We've got a recharge port, 2 AV switches, your SD card, your Prizm soundboard. Got a 18650 lithium-ion battery. This one is a 3400 milliamp. You've got your 3D printed chassis. This particular one comes from Jedi Jordan. You've got a speaker. This is a 28mm bass speaker from KR Sabers. Got a little bit of double-sided adhesive foam for helping to keep the soundboard on. You've got your solder, of course. This is little thermal tape for your LED going onto the heatsink. Got a variety of scissors and tools and whatnot. Flux, man's best friend. Soldering iron. And yeah. So, and you've got your hilt, of course. This empty hilt is a SaberForge Destiny. It's a Jaina Solo inspired hilt design. It has been pre-drilled for 3 12mm size holes. Those are for your recharge port and then your 2 AV switches. You've got your retention screw here for the blade plug. You've got your retention screw here for the LED module, cover tech, and then pommel that threads off. Otherwise, as far as I'm aware, the hilt is solid. So let's get started. I like to work from the top on down, so we're going to start with the LED. I'm going to move the hilt out of the way and get started with the LED. So your LED module heatsink is composed of 2 parts. There's the copper base and then the aluminum cover, I guess, for lack of a better word. First thing that I like to do is to take off a little piece of the thermal tape, stick it onto the base. It's a double-sided adhesive, so let's peel away that cover if we can, exposing the other sticky side. There we go. And then I put the LED on here, being careful not to touch the actual diodes themselves. Throw that away. Okay. Now let's get started. We'll pre-tin the soldering iron tip. And then there are 6 pads, a plus and a minus for each of the 3 diodes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin each of these pads, just to make it a little bit easier to stick the wires on. Let's see here if you can... there you go. So these bottom 2 pads have been tinned. The top left 2 and the top right 2 are still coppery colored. Those have not yet been tinned. So I'm going to do that now. Now you see the bottom 2 have been tinned. The top 2 I'm going to tin now. Come on. Okay, let's grab some wire. So we've got red, we've got blue, and we've got white. I'm going to start with the negatives for each. And for the negatives, I like to use the color wire that the LED is. So I'm going to measure, the LED sits right about there, and then I want maybe about that much to come out of the hilt. So when I pull the chassis out to access the SD card, I have about that much. We've got red, blue, and white, so we've got the white. And now I'm going to measure them so that they're all the same length. There's blue. And instead of using red, I'm going to use orange because red is always positive, and I'm doing the negative wires now. So the orange wire will correspond with the negative for the red. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder those on now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clip off just a little bit of the tip of the wire to expose the wire inside. You can see there. Then what I'm going to do, dip it into some flux. And then get the solderer and the soldering iron. Boom. We've now pre-tinned the little exposed wire, and this goes onto the negative of the red pad. Done. Just like that. I'm going to repeat the process now for the white negative and the blue negative. Expose a little wire, boop, into the flux. I joined the solder, there we go. And onto the white negative. Done. Now on to blue. Blue, 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 blue. I'm blue, dabba dee dabba die, dabba dee dabba die, dabba dee dabba die. Good song. Alright, 3 negatives have been wired on. I'm going to get some red. I'm going to cut 2 little bits so that I can connect the 3 positive pads that are on the LED. And then have a single red wire running off of those connected 3 pads. I'm going to dip one side, 2 side into the flux. Got the solder ready. 1, 2. Alright, now we're going to connect from one positive pad to another positive pad. Again, being careful not to touch any of the diodes, because you can damage them with your fingers if you touch them. Let's just show that you have the red wire going from one positive to the other positive. And now we'll do the same for the second little positive wire. Expose the top, expose the bottom. Little dip into the flux, little dip into the flux. Alright, one side has been tinned. Now the other side has been tinned. Both sides are tinned. So we're going to go from one of the positive sides that has already been wired up, and we'll connect that now to the third and final positive that has not yet been wired. Boop. There we go. Now we're going to cut a longer piece of red. We'll have it about the same length as the other wires. Actually, we'll make that one go a little bit longer because the three negative wires on the soundboard are pretty much in the same front part of the board, while the red is the positive. It has to go all the way back to the back of the board. So we'll make the red wire a little bit longer. so that it can reach the back of the soundboard. Same process, cut and expose, dip and flux, and then solder. Now we'll put this onto the pad that has 2 of the small red wires, and now we are all set. So we're going to take each wire, we'll thread it through the hole of the copper heatsink. There goes the orange one through the hole, white one through the hole, and finally the red positive through the hole. Okay, almost done with the LED. Now we take our optics heatsink, or our optics little piece, our lens, and there are 3 holes in your LED, 1, 2, 3. And you take those 3 nubs of the optics and you just put them in there like so. Done. And that's how it rests. Then you take your cap, put it on over, and start screwing it in. And you can get a little flathead screwdriver, put it into the slot, and tighten it. There you go. You've got your LED pretty much wired up. Last thing to do is to add the resistor onto any of the colors that you need. In this case, we only have 1 red. If you were wiring up a red, red, white, for example, you would need 2 resistors, 1 for each of the red negatives, or a red, orange, or an amber, if you had any of those colors. So I snip off the orange wire. That's your negative for the red diode. We'll expose that little bit of the orange. We'll also expose this little bit of the orange, and we're basically going to solder the resistor in between. Dip that into flux. Okay, so this wire is ready to go. We'll set that aside. Dip this small exposed piece into the flux. Alright, solder is ready to go. Now, I'm going to grab some heat shrink. This is, I think it's 1/8 heat shrink. I don't remember what the sizing is. But I'm going to grab 2 pieces. One of them, the smallest that I have, and then one of them a little bit bigger, or a little bit wider, I should say. Let's see. There you go. So this top one here is the smaller one. This is the slightly wider one. I'm going to put the wider one on first, and then the smaller one. Okay. Now we'll grab our resistor. It's got 2 long legs. I trim it off about that much. You have about the same amount of length as you have in your exposed wires on these guys. Dip that exposed bit of resistor into the flux, and then line it up with your solder, and now you've tinned that. Ready to go now. And solder the 2 of those together. The resistor and the orange wire. Then you can put on your 2 pieces of heat shrink. I like to do one of them first. Let's see if we can do that. There we go. So one of the pieces of heat shrink first. Then I like to use, you can either use a heat gun, or you can just use some part of your soldering iron that doesn't have solder on it as a heat mechanism to make the heat shrink shrink. Because that's why it's called heat shrink. It shrinks when there's heat applied. And then we put on the slightly wider heat shrink on top of the smaller heat shrink. The reason for this will become apparent in just a second. It's not absolutely necessary that you add 2 layers of heat shrink, but I personally like to do it because it adds a little bit of extra stability and rigidity. It just makes it a little bit safer. Now we're cut off the end of the other side of the resistor. For these resistors, it does not matter what side is what. They don't have a polarity. Some resistors do, but the ones that we use for main LEDs do not. The dyno-ohm resistors, the variable resistors from Custom Saber Shop that you may use for little accent LEDs, those are polarity sensitive. But we're not using any of those here, so we're not going to worry about that. now we've got our orange wire again. It's already been revealed and pre-tinned. There we go. Now we're going to cut off another little bit of the smallest heat shrink. Put that on. And then we'll shrink that down using soldering iron. And then we'll cut off another second bit that is a little bit larger. Thread that onto the end of the orange wire, bring it down. There you go. And then shrink that guy down. Now, a little bit of heat shrink that is quite a bit bigger. I'm going to cut about that length so that it can go over the resistor and cover the entire resistor, sort of bleed onto the other little bits of smaller heat shrink that I've already done, like this. And so now the reason that we had 2 layers of heat shrink is to sort of build up the heat shrink profile so that when you put the bigger one on and it shrinks down, there's no exposed gap, or there's no, it just makes for a tighter and better fit, I've found, if you have 2 or 3 layers of heat shrink before you put on the larger piece on top. You know what I'm saying? So sort of go on all 4 sides of the heat shrink until you have this. So you see that here on this side it's sort of a seamless transition, and on this side there's a seamless transition. So now you're ready to go. Alright, I like to grab all 4 of my wires and then start twisting them together. There's probably better, quicker, faster, easier ways to twist wires, but I'm lazy and this is sufficient for me. This just helps to keep the wires organized inside the hilt, and then when they come out the bottom side of the hilt, it'll help to have these 4 wires together, so I can tell, okay, this clump of 4 wires I remember are for the LED, or this other clump of 4 wires is for the recharge port, for example. Okie dokie. So that's kind of twisted and ready to go. I'm going to set this aside for now. We're going to wire up these next 3 here. I'm going to go recharge port and then 2 AV switches here. That's what I'm going to do. So your recharge port has 3 legs, 1 for the shared positive, and then 1 to go to the negative of the board, and 1 to go to the negative of the battery. The shared positive goes to the positive of the battery and the positive of the recharge port. So what I've done is I've tinned those 3 legs using solder. I'm going to do the same thing now with these 2 switches. I don't need to dip these guys in flux. Thank the maker. You can if you want to, but it's not. Oh, come back. Solder fell through the little hole. There we go. Okay, we'll put the switches aside for now and just focus on the recharge port. So shared positive, that's red. I'm going to wire up 2 wires. Let's see, so if LED is there, recharge port starts about there and then goes to the other red. Alright, so now we've got the length that we need for that wire. We'll cut 2 of them. One of them is going to go from the recharge port to the positive on the soundboard, and the other wire is going to go to the positive of the battery. So we have 2 reds. Black, I always use black for the negative battery. You may have your own wire color conventions. And then I like to use gray for the soundboard negative. Alright, so now I've got 4 wires. I'm going to go ahead and strip and tin a little bit off of the edge of each of them. Or off of the back of each of them. At the end of each of them. I don't know, it's late, I'm tired. Alright, there's the gray one down. Let's do, oh, stop rolling. Heave-ho, splash, bump, rolling down the road. Heave-ho, splash, bump, roll, roll, rolling down the hole. If you know where that song is from, 10 points to you. You get brownie points if you know where that song is from. Let's see how nerdy you guys are. All right, for the red ones, I'm going to cut a little bit of a longer bit at the end. Maybe about yay long. I'm going to cut the same length off of the end of this one. I'm going to join the 2 exposed wire bits together. Alright, so we'll twist them together. Just the exposed bits there. Then we'll dip the whole thing into a little bit of flux. There we go. Now we've got some solder on that. I'm going to go ahead and trim a little bit off of that, so now we've got kind of a standard size at the bottom. All right, now let's go ahead and wire this guy up. There's the positive. This is the negative board. Come on. There's that. And the negative battery. I've done this enough times now where I know which one is which. When I was first starting out, I definitely had to refer back to the manuals, like which leg is which, I don't remember. Alright. Now let's grab some heat shrink. One for the negative battery, one for the negative board, and then a slightly larger one for the 2 wires that are for the positive, the shared positive. Alright, we'll start with the black wire. There goes the heat shrink. Bloop. Let's do the gray wire. And bloop. And then the shared positive. The slightly larger heat shrink. Alrighty. Again, using non-solder covered parts of my soldering iron to shrink the heat shrink down. Alrighty, there you go, 4 wires. We'll go ahead and give those guys a little twist as well. All right. I'm going to remove the little nut on the end of the recharge port. We're going to go ahead and put the 4 wires in, get the nut on. This is going to be a difficult part. It's much easier to do this if you have a hilt that unthreads anywhere in the middle or any part. This is a solid hilt, so it's a little difficult. We're going to use a very long screwdriver to go in through the front and help twist the nut onto the recharge port. And then we'll do the same thing for the 2 switches. In my previous video, I glued the switch and the recharge port in. You can do that. I have started preferring to use nuts wherever possible. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. All right, there's your recharge port in. I'm going to hold that, and then you probably won't be able to see this very well on camera, but I'm going to go in, and then I'm going to not touch any of those wires or cut any of those wires, and I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. Get the nut aligned. There we go. And all right, we are in business, I think. Yep, there we go. Twist, 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 twist. Halfway there. All the way down to the bottom. The fun part is when it gets to the bottom, and then you have to try and make it tight. Alright, there we go. We'll thread this back through the bottom a little bit later. For now, we're going to go with switch number 1, which is going to be black in this case. For switch 1, the main activation switch, I like to use yellow. That's where the LED is going to be. Switch 1 starts there, goes to about there. Alright, 1 yellow wire, 2 yellow wire. Alright, same deal, grab it with pliers, trim a little bit off, dip it into some flex, get your solder ready, and boom, that's one. We've pre-tinned both the little switch lead and the wire, so now the solder just melts together and joins the two little bits together. God bless flux and solder. Done. Alright, now we do the second little bit. You know, there are alligator helping claws, helping hands that you can use to hold things together, but I'm lazy and I don't like doing that, so yeah. Alright. Heat shrink for your switch. Heave ho, splash, bump, rolling down the hole. And then we shrink down the heat shrink. And a little bit in between. There we go. Alright. I'm getting lazy, so I'm just going to twist the end of it instead of the entire thing. Alright, I'm going to remove the pommel and we'll thread this guy down through the bottom. Get our nut ready on that side. In you go, and out you come the other side. Alright, thread the wire through the nut. Nut falls all the way down. And then again, sorry, this is boring. You don't get to watch anything fun happen while I get this nut on. There we go. That was easier. Having a lot of light helps, and having a lot of patience helps. Because, like anything that is threaded, you have to get it in on the right angle so that it can start threading, you know, so that the threads catch, for example. So it may take you a couple tries before you're able to get the nut to actually catch the threads on the bottom of the switch. Alright, here we go. Now it's tight. I'm going to hold it with my hand a little tighter so that I can really get in and make the nut tight against the inside of the wall. Yep, that's good. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, there you go. Now we'll do the same thing for your second switch. These can be the same color, these can be lit switches. I really hate using illuminated switches, so I just have a black and a silver one. Let's see, what color haven't I used? Purple. I like to use purple for the second switch. So that's going to go to around there. Flip. One purple, two purple. Alright, go. Same deal. You're a pro at this by now. Trim the wire, dip it in flux, bloop. Get your solder. And there you go. One switch. One switch wire down, one switch wire to go. Okie dokie. Heave ho, splash, bump. I'm getting sick of that song now. Heat shrink, heat shrink, heat shrink, heat shrink is the most important thing in the world. Next to flux, of course. Alrighty, heat shrink goes onto the wire. It covers the legs of the switch, and then you use soldering iron or heat gun or a hair dryer to shrink it down. Okey-doke. Heave ho, shut up, Shamim. Jesus. Alright, twisty wisty. In you go. Out you come. There's your little nut. That goes on. Alright. Now, last nut, thank God. And after this, we'll put the LED into the hilt, and then we'll be ready to start on the soundboard. Yes, alright, we've cut the nut on the switch threads, and there we go, we're turning. Bum, 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 ba, bum, bum, ba, bum. Almost there, almost there, almost there. I'm almost there, I cannot wait until this stupid thing is done, 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 done. Okay, now we make it a little tight. There we go. Very good. Alright, now I'm going to thread this guy back down. And then see if I can catch it from inside here. Almost got it. Come on, out you come. Yes, alright, we've got that. Now time for the LED to get the same treatment. We're gonna thread you down past all three of those. There, gotcha. Woo! Okay, now we'll grab a Allen wrench and then set that up around there, and we'll tighten you down. Good. Got the LED. Okay, here's all the wires that we have coming out the end of the hilt. I'm going to grab a larger piece of heat shrink now and go over all of these. This will help keep the wires in place in front of the soundboard so that it just adds a little bit of extra order and security and sturdiness to all the wires going to the soundboard instead of just wires kind of spaghetti-like going to the soundboard. So that's what I like to do. All right, we are ready to go. I'm going to throw a kill key into, I should show off my custom kill key. This is the box from the Destiny. I just drilled out a little bit the switch hole, or the screw hole, I should say. Put a little recharge port thing there. So now you've got a control box for accuracy when it's sitting on the box or on your shelf, and then you pull it out and you're ready to duel with it. It's a very nice dueling hilt. Anywho, let's. All right, it's soundboard time. We're going to look at the soundboard. We're going to cut that open. Ouchie plop. Throw that away. Get our chassis ready to go. Get our battery ready to go. Speaker ready to go. What I'm going to do first is we're going to move these out of the way. I'm actually going to wire up the speaker and get that ready to go. So I'm going to put that into the chassis. And I need super glue. Alright. Green. I like to use green for speakers. So it'll come up about that far. So the speaker wire will go through this little channel, up through this hole, and then right to about there. So this is sufficient length. I always like to cut a little bit extra and then cut it down if I need to, rather than realize that I've cut it just too short and then have to either rewire it or add an extension to the wiring or whatever. That's what I like to do. Make it a little bit longer than necessary. Alright. One speaker wire. So your speaker, it's got a little bit of exposed aluminum solder right there and right there. So those are the two sides that you're going to do. Speakers do have polarity in other applications, but for our lightsabers, they do not have polarity, so it doesn't matter what side you wire, positive or negative. That's why I'm using two green wires instead of a red and a black. Because polarity does not matter in custom sabers. Boop. Alrighty. Second one. There you go. Nope, that didn't quite catch. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. A little bit of heat shrink cut at an angle. So you see I've cut the heat shrink at an angle to help it go and cover the exposed bit of speaker lead. Come on. There we go. Alrighty. Shrink that wire, shrink those hips, shrink that wire, shrink those hips. Move, work, move, work. Alright, and the second one, angled side down first, so that it can cover the exposed bit. Ring around the rosy. Pocket full of heat shrink. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Alrighty. Let's see. The printing quality on this particular one wasn't super good, so I'm gonna just widen that a little bit so I can get both of my wires through. There we go. We've got both wires through. And now, before I put the speaker all the way in, I'm gonna add some glue, some super glue to the top rim up here, and then the top rim over here, and then a little bit on the inside lips as well. Alrighty, and in you go. Boom. And I'm gonna hold that in for about 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, wipe off a little bit of the extra glue. And that should be ready to go. Grab some water, excuse me. I usually don't talk so much when I'm installing. Okie dokie. And now, one at a time, we'll thread that up through here. Okay, so those are ready to go onto the soundboard, which we're gonna start looking at right now. Put this chassis aside. I'm a little OCD. The top edges, you know, on all four sides, because this comes in a big plate full of, like, I don't know, 20 soundboards, and so there's a little bit of PCB board on all four sides that I like to sand off, because I don't like those little bits sticking out and looking ugly. Okay. There's your Prizm soundboard. I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin all of the parts that I'm going to be using, all the pads that I'm going to be needing. So we'll start with L1. There we go. L2. Alright, so I'm just gonna see if you can see. There's L1 and there's L2. You notice that L3 I haven't, I'm sorry, my camera sucks, but L3 is right around there. I haven't done anything yet to it, but L1 is here, L2 is here. I filled both of those with solder. And on the back side, you can see L1, L2, L3 has not yet been filled. So that's what I'm doing. I'm tinning those, I'm filling them with solder so that I can stick the wires on. Okay, L3. Get a bit more solder out. Now we're going to do these three switches right here: activation, auxiliary, and ground. There's activation, there's auxiliary, and there's ground. I flip it over to the back side to make sure did it go all the way through. Yes, there's enough solder, it went all the way through. Okay. You've got your accent pads here at the front if you're going to be using accent LEDs like lit switches or other blinkies, but I'm not using any of those here. There are diagrams in the Prizm manual in case you want to see how to wire those up, but we won't be looking at those here because this tutorial kind of is a bit more of a basic, like the absolute basic that you could do. Okay, there's your positive and negative on the board. And last but not least, the speakers. Okay, speaker 1 and speaker 2. There we go. We're all set. Now I'm going to get a little bit of, I'm going to measure it out here, so like where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it right there. It's enough room for the SD card to pop out. So I'm going to get a little bit of tape. Yeah, that's going to maybe cut it a little bit shorter. Okay. And we'll stick that right there on the chassis. And then uncover it. Now before we stick this on, there's this big yellow thing. Now I understand that the Prizm V5, which is about to be released in the next week or two, will have a much smaller little yellow thing, or big thing. So this next step may not be necessary if you're using a Prizm V5, depending on the particular soundboard, or depending on the particular saber hilt. These SaberForge hilts have an ID of 1.125. So depending on the chassis that you use, most chassis will require you to sand a little bit of the yellow thing off so that it can slide in and fit, because otherwise the yellow thing will get stuck. So I've got a hand Dremel here, and we're just gonna sand a little bit of it down. Let's see if you can, on this side you can see a little bit of the silver solder. You shouldn't sand down past the silver solder point. So go at an angle until you reach just a little bit above that solder point. That's my general rule of thumb. So here we go. It's going to be loud, sorry. Okay, that should do it. So you see how one side has been sanded down at an angle. This side, that's what we've done. So that should be sufficient to allow the soundboard and the chassis to go all the way in. Now we're gonna stick you down right there. That's not going anywhere. All right. First, what I'm gonna do is wire the two speaker wires there. So I'm going to. I like to kind of go like that. So I'm going to cut them right there. So it'll be just a little bit of the green coming right there onto the pads. That's what I like to do. So we're going to measure this one here and snip. And get some of the wire exposed. Solder it, flux it up. And then solder it up. There we go. Okay. And then, oops, come on, up you get. And then hold that down with my finger and onto the pad. Boom. One down. This next one will go a little bit farther so that it can reach the second pad. Boom. We've trimmed that. Grip it. Strip it. Dip it. Oh my god, I love that. I love that. Grip it. Strip it. Dip it. I love it. And then solder it. That last one doesn't quite work, but anyway. Okay, and hold. Come on, work with me here. There we go. Boom. Your two wires are all set. And it still allows for SD card access, which is on this side. So you don't have to worry about messing up your wiring when you go to access the SD card. Okay. Now we're ready to attach all of these guys. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the battery stuff first. So this is, you can do a JST connection if you wish, or you can snip the JST connection off and solder it directly. I'm going to solder directly. Be careful not to cut both wires at the same time, because the metal of your scissors may create a connection between the positive and negative of the battery, and that would not be good. All right, put that aside. We'll grab a red and the black. We remember that the red and the black here were for the positive and negative of the battery. So let's trim to about there. That's good. Trim the black, trim the red. I'll dip both of them in, solder these guys up. 1, 2. Okay. Then I'm going to grab some heat shrink, get that ready. 1 heat shrink, 2 heat shrink. I'll move some of that stuff out of the way. Put some heat shrink on the red, and then heat shrink on the black. Now, it's also not a good idea to expose both your red and your black wires at the same time, so let's start with the red. We'll just expose that. Dip it in some flux. Where'd my solder go? There you are. Alrighty. Red is ready. And then we'll align those two exposed bits, solder, and poof. Heat shrink goes over the connection, and then we shrink it down with heat. Heat shrink not only covers any exposed connections, but it also becomes a little bit more solid once it cools down. So it acts as a reinforcer to the joint. And now the black. Strip a little bit off, dip a little bit in. There we go. All right, and the black is ready to go. We'll just bend that so it's straight. And I can go like so. Boop. There we go. Black and red have both been connected. Your battery is hooked up. And we'll put that into the chassis right now. Once we finish shrinking the heat shrink. Okay, there we go. So clearly, battery goes on the bottom side. And to about there or so. Good, that's ready. Now we can just wire up everything else. This part is relatively simple. I'm going to start with the switches. Okay, how far do we have? Let's see. The red and this red and gray need to go about there, which means our switches should go to about there. Okay. Got 2 purples and 2 yellows. First step is to take one of the purples, that's your aux switch, cut a little bit of a longer bit off, and then do the same for one of the yellows. We're going to join these 2 together, and this will be our ground pad. This will go to the ground pad for the 2 switches. Twisty, twisty. Alright, there we go. We'll dip the, oops, that's a lot of solder. We'll dip the 2 conjoined wires into flux and then solder it up. Alright, now that they're together, trim that down a bit, and I go through this archway and onto the ground pad, G and D. It's the 3rd pad underneath the activation and the aux. Boom. So that's connected. Next up is the purple. That will be your aux. So we'll strip a little bit off. General rule of thumb when stripping wire, for me personally, is to strip, measure how big your pad is on the soundboard that you're doing or on the LED that you're doing, and then strip that amount of length off of the wire. That's my general rule of thumb. Boop. All right, purple one's ready to go. It's on the soundboard. We'll do the same for the yellow now. And it's been dipped in flux. There we go. Now we have solder. And we'll take you and go on to the top activation. Done. All right. So your 3 wires for, or I guess your 4 wires, but your 3 spots for activation, your auxiliary, and your ground have been wired up. Now let's do LED. Okay, the red one should be long and goes all the way there. So we start with, from left to right here, C1, C2, C3, or L1, L2, L3, as it's written here on this soundboard. RGB, red, green, blue, would be your, if you're doing a color changing RGB, you would start with L1 is red, L2 is green, L3 is blue. Since I'm wiring a blue, red, white, I can do it in whatever order I want to, and then I can set the config editor appropriately. But I'm going to do red, blue, white in this case. So we'll start with orange. We'll measure where does it need to go. It needs to go to about there. Cut the extra bit off, get rid of that. Okay, so orange is the red negative. This will go on to L1. Alright, until when you go. There you are. 1 down. Okay, blue is next, I say. I have spoken. It's my soundboard. I can wire it how I want to. Come out. There we go. Okay, blue, we'll thread that in. And you can go to L2. Boom. White. You want to go to about there. That's where L3 is. Bloop. Alright, now that's a little bit too long. I'm going to trim a little bit of that off with scissors. Okay, and L3, final color. Done. Okay. Now we've only got a few wires left. These 2 reds are going to join together. They will go to the common positive. And then this is the gray. It's going to go to the common negative on the, or I guess it's just the one negative on the soundboard. I'm going to start with the gray because it comes on this side first, so it's easier to get to. And we'll cut you at around there. Almost done, guys. Almost done. Very exciting. All right. Make sure you remember to thread it through the little arch. I always forget to do that. Okay. There we go. And now the positives. All right. what am I gonna do? Thread you over to that side. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna join the 2 of them here into 1 wire that will then go through the arch, so that only 1 wire has to go here because it's getting kind of tight with the speaker wires and then the negative board wires. So I'm gonna consolidate a little bit here. Cut a little bit of a longer length off of 1 red wire and a little bit of the longer length off the other red wire, and join the 2 red wires together in holy matrimony. Ha 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 ha. Twisty twisty. Alright, dip you both into some flux. down a little bit. Get one of the red wires. I'll expose you, dip you, and get you covered in solder. There we go. Let's grab some heat shrink now. Get a little bit of a longer length so that it can cover both sides of the wiring. And twist you over. There we go. That's nice. Very nice. And shrinky dinky hinky dinky. Okay, boys and girls, final connection. Very exciting. Let's go through the there we go, through the archway, and we need about that length. Okay. Bloop. Okay, it's a little bit too long. I'm going to trim it down. Boom. Okay, let's get some of this out of the way. Everything is wired up. Let's get this bigger chunk of heat shrink. Battery wires are a little thicker, so we'll shove you guys through. Okay. Get it to something like that. Something like this. This is what I like to do. Right up against the arch. And hold it tight, and then start shrinking that heat shrink. I'm going to go from this angle. It makes it easier for me to see what I'm doing. The bigger the heat shrink is, the more heat it takes, the longer it takes to make sure you get it all. So I'm just making sure I got it all. Okay, let's give it a test, yeah? Let's get our SD card. I've already pre-programmed this with the color profiles that I want to make a nice purple with the royal blue and the red with a white flash on clash. Gonna grab the SD card in some pliers and get it right in there. Then you hear the click. This should be ready to go. Cross your fingers. Let's hope it all works. All right, we have boot. Top button. There, we've got purple with white flash on clash. Auxiliary button works. Got blade lockup works. Alrighty. That's exciting. Now let's shove it all in. I like to give it a little bit of a twist. In you go. Very good. Where'd my pommel go? So I push the speaker in until it's about flush, and then I use the pommel, screw the pommel in to get the rest of it. This cover tech is loose. That's what was rattling and bothering me. There we go. I'm like, what's that rattling noise? It's the cover tech. So there you go, guys. Hold the second button. Switch to another font. This is Gray Meat. So we have red, with white flash on flash. And blue. Now let's try the color changing. Okay, this is blue and white, sort of a silver. That's nice. Oops. And then this is red and white, so sort of a pink, very pale salmon pink. And back to purple. And we'll put our kill key in. So there you have it, guys. Just a little over an hour to install a Prizm soundboard. So very possible to do. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about anything that you saw in the tutorial, please feel free to comment below. Otherwise, there's a link to my Facebook business page in the description. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook. That's where I do all of my interacting for the most part, and my business is run out of Facebook. So yeah, I want to show my gratitude and appreciation. I want to thank you all so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that you found it entertaining. I hope that you found it instructive and useful. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to add. Your chassis size will vary, your hilt design will vary, but for the most part, the general process will be identical for any Prizm soundboard. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.